wasn't just about the house. It was about the neighborhood. It was about people that had been your neighbors for years. It's about people you grew up with and went to school with. It was a village that supported each other during times of racism and Jim Crow segregation. We went outside of our neighborhood and we had white and colored water fountains. We came inside our neighborhood and we were treated with dignity and respect, the dignity and respect that we deserved. So it was not just taking homes, you were tearing apart the village. And so people moved all over town in different places, but they lost that connection.
The gas plant district was a monumental place in St. Petersburg's history. It was the second African-American neighborhood to be established in St. Pete and is a place where a lot of people grew up and experienced life.
So much of what was said about our neighborhood was that it was blighted, it was poor, it was run down. That's not true.
I was a youngster in this city when we had to stay in the area where we were born. So my going out of the gas plant area to go downtown was not such an easy thing to do. It was stressful, as a matter of fact, as a child, because I lived a life where there were two worlds here. There was a black world in the gas plant area, and there was a other world outside of there. So I had some very interesting experiences.
There are lots of stories, but you know what the stories are all about? They're about the camaraderie, they're about the togetherness, they're about the fun we had. They were about making our own scooters to scoot down the street. They were about some people swimming in Booker's Creek. They were about going to school together and knowing each other, walking to school and walking to church, and your teachers living next door to you, and the pastor living next door to you, and your doctor living next door to you. Think about what that means when you have all of these people. Think about the role models for young children when you're living next door to a doctor or to a teacher or to a lawyer and you see them dress up and go to work every day. Think about how that inspires you to do more with your life because you know the opportunity is there. You see it every day. You talk to them. I walked to school with my librarian many mornings because she didn't drive. And so as she walked up Fifth Avenue, I lived at 1305 Fifth Avenue, I'd just come off the porch and walk on the rest of the way to 16th Street, now Johns Hopkins, with my librarian. How many kids get to say they do that today?
But nothing lasts forever. In the 70s, the gas plant district had I-275 built right through it, ultimately splitting the community into bits and pieces.
It does separate it. It's almost like a dividing line. Okay, I would say studies will show, this is in my opinion, studies will show that it was intentional, okay? And you'll see the correlation between the interstate and Tropicana field on how it negatively impacted. This was all predominantly African-American community. So whether you can put that back together again, I'm not so sure, because what has happened over time is that the community has dispersed, has moved into other areas of the city. And you would need an initiative like a gas plant to bring the community back. And that's part of what we're hoping will take place.
The gas plant area was a wonderful area to grow up in. And many of the people who owned their homes were compensated fairly well, but if you rent it, those are the people who really weren't compensated very well. They were just given money to move, and wherever they moved, the rent was higher. And so there's one young man that is very much a part of our gas plant neighborhood association. He remembers being homeless.
What once was a place where kids would run and play and community barbecues would take place was now officially going to be another addition to I-275. And through eminent domain, people's homes were taken.
The last person to move out of the gas plant neighborhood was Mrs. Macon. And her husband had built for her the most beautiful home, parquet wood floors, I mean, beautiful. And she just did not want to give up her home. Her husband was deceased, and she loved her home. She stayed there. She was the last person to leave. There was nothing around her but dirt, because they had torn down all the homes. And so there was a picture on the front page of what was then the St. Petersburg Times, of her standing in front of her home, her youngest daughter Dina sitting on the stairs, the bulldozer waiting on the other side of the street to raise her house and tear it down. She was finally leaving. She got more money than anyone else because she was there and she was stopping progress. And she waited and waited until she got a decent price for her home. She did not want to leave her home.
Soon after, it would be decided to build Tropicana in the early 80s, and to go with the giant sports dome, the neighborhood was demolished for a parking lot.
There was a broken promise. How many of you have heard about the broken promise? The broken promise, and I don't call it that, I call it a lie. The lie was when they first took our land, it was a referendum that went in front of the city, which means all the voters could vote for it. And what they voted for was to take that land for better housing and employment opportunities. Most black people didn't want to move, but when you said, I'll have better housing, I'll have better jobs, many of them agreed. But within just a couple of years, without going back to the city for a vote, the city council decided, nah, we're not doing that. We're going to build a baseball park. That's the broken promise. And that's why I call it a lie, because I don't believe in my heart that they ever intended to do anything but build a ballpark.
But such promises were never kept. Over half a century later, another redevelopment of the area is underway. And this time, city officials say they want to do things right.
That it is meant to blend into St. Pete. It's meant to blend into the development. You see all the cranes in the air that's moving from downtown west. It's not just a baseball stadium, it is a facility that the entire community will be able to access and use.
But what exactly will the residents get from this new development? According to the Rays and the Hines Development Company, the project will bring, among other things, a new ballpark with a capacity for 30,000 people, a 4,000-seat concert venue, 50,000 square feet of civic space, including a new home for Carter G. Woodson African American Museum, and more.
It'll be a marketplace atmosphere. It's a destination. It'll be activated not just on game day, but throughout the year. And it'll also be accessible to the community for things like graduations and concerts and other things. Well, having grown up there, the first thing that I wanted to make sure is that history that I just talked about a little bit was remembered, that folks didn't see this as a blank slate. That's the term I remember, because it's not a blank slate. There was a lot of sacrifice. And the promise was economic development, jobs, opportunities for economic development for black businesses to kind of reinvigorate those businesses after they moved. And I wanted us to remember that those promises have been made and documented by the government, and none of them have come true. If you look at the Trop, it's surrounded by asphalt. And so I wanted to make sure those things were embedded into our request for proposals. We want a number of things to come back to the community, and that was important to me to set it up that way. And so we have an agreement of 1,200 affordable and workforce apartments, homes coming out of this deal. About half will be on site, 600 on site, about half off site. It was important to me that was embedded into this agreement.
The Rays say that they're also working very hard to ensure that the new stadium will benefit St. Pete.
We have always just wanted to figure out how to build a new stadium in Tampa Bay for our franchise and for all of our fans. And being able to, as I hope we'll do this November, put a shovel in the ground and be fully committed to staying right where we are, where we love. It's both exciting, but it's also a huge relief.
Working with Mayor Welch and his staff of the city of St. Pete, we've come up with a very robust list of nonprofits and organizations that we think that we can depend on to make sure that we help not only disseminate the money, but identify the right people to partake in the programs that we have lined up. A lot of it, I think, is just establishing trust. The most difficult thing I think we've had to do since the inception of responding to the RFP is being able to have a dialogue with the community and establishing, a foundation of trust. So I think one of the things that's going to be different about this project is the 20-year runway and the opportunity for folks that are going through job training to actually have jobs that can actually facilitate a career. Typically, projects only last 4 to 5 years. Again, with a 20-year runway, we can have a kid right now that's in Lakewood High School that graduates in 3 or 4 years that can find a career in one of the jobs that are going to be on site, whether that's in construction or engineering or in development, and work its way through the project and possibly be a business owner at one point on site as well. And the other thing I think about this project is special is the ability to what we call age in place. So there are going to be things for everyone to do on this site, whether that's daycare, whether that's entertainment with the museum and Booker Music Hall, going to games, Game Day Street, but just the living requirements and accessibility, affordable housing, senior living for people that are over 55. So truly a place where everyone can find their footing.
But it's not all about baseball and business. There are also plans to move the Carter G. Woodson African American Museum to the area.
The Woodson African American Museum of Florida is excited to be a part of yet a transformation that will occur here in the city of St. Petersburg and will become a renaissance for what we'll be able to celebrate for years to come. The proposed museum for the location of the Tropicana Field current site will be inclusive of a sculpture garden, a rooftop. The Rays have in fact requested an opportunity to have a gallery within the museum where we might depict Negro League baseball as well. So outside of the art, outside of the artifacts, we'll also look to have an extraordinary space where we can bring in folks for lecture series, a 500-seated banquet space, an auditorium for speakers. We are most excited about ensuring that the history of St. Petersburg is told, specifically that of the gas plant community. I'm most excited about respect. The respect that's not currently associated with the preservation, interpretation, celebration of African American history and culture.
While there are many supporters of the redevelopment, some people are not on board.
The price of housing since the pandemic has gone up as much as 40% in the St. Petersburg area. We want to see more housing for people making less money. Right now in the deal, there's only about 1,200 units, so that represents only about a quarter of the housing units that are going to go on site are going to be affordable, or what is considered affordable. And so we have really been pushing the city to make more units for people who make $20 an hour or less. Really what we're asking the city to do is making sure that we're approaching this with a lens of equity to support groups that have traditionally been discriminated against. Besides the housing, we're concerned about how much the city is paying to the Rays. So the Rays are a professional baseball team. They make a whole lot of money. And so the funding structure of this deal really requires taxpayers to end up footing the bill for the Rays, who make a whole lot of money and quite frankly just don't need our financial support. And so beyond the benefits of this deal, it's making sure that the Rays are paying their fair share. And the position that the Rays have kind of taken this whole time is the deal what it is. And so the deal does include a $50 million equity fund. And so during the conversation, we felt very much restricted of like, what do you want us to do with these $50 million? And so throughout like community meetings, city meetings, the Rays have been very consistent that if you try to change any aspect of this deal, we'll just walk away. And that doesn't really make for a good faith negotiation.
That has not been fulfilled. As far as the Black and Brown community of City of St. Petersburg, there has not been changes in our community. All the changes are around our community. As far as housing, again, I feel that our Black and Brown community has been left out on almost all the decisions that have been made. My Black and Brown community still won't be able to afford their affordable housing because basically you will have to make about $80,000 a year. In the Black and Brown community, there's not too many of us that makes that type of money. So as far as what they propose, you're still looking at another 10, 15 years before those promises are made, and then anything can be tweaked down the road where they don't have to go through with it. So I have watched the city of St. Petersburg not do as much for the Black and Brown community as it's done on the outskirts of it. You have some of our small apartment communities that is living in the housing that's deplorable. Then the city won't drop a dime in any of those places, but they could get a condo built in no time at all. It's definitely one-sided, and that's my personal view.
I don't think the old community as it was previously will ever be restored, okay? Personal opinion, that's not something that is probably in talking points anywhere. What it can do, this redevelopment, can improve the quality of life of those who are still here. Because if you think about it, when that took place, and I would venture to say 40, 50 years ago, many of those who were living there at that time have now gone on. So the restoration of that would not occur because that was home. Now what we will do is develop opportunities for businesses, for jobs, for housing, but it will be different. So there will be some restoration, if you will, but it's still going to be different than it was at that time.
Now this is the biggest project in St. Pete's history, in Tampa Bay's history. It's going to be something that kind of plays on the vibe of St. Pete as it is now.
The redesign of Tropicana Field is the hope to honor those who lost their homes. Recognizing the story and the wrongdoings of the past keeps us from repeating history.
So now, what you're hearing is we have an opportunity to address the broken promise. You heard the word reparations. I used the word restorative justice. It's not about money all the time. So what does that look like? It looks like opportunities that we never had, opportunities that were promised to us and not fulfilled. It looks like affordable housing. It looks like an opportunity to own your own business. It looks like an opportunity for a better education. It looks like an opportunity where young Black boys and girls and men and women don't have to worry about law enforcement treating them unfairly or being stopped driving while Black. That's what restorative justice looks like. It looks like treating everybody like a human being and treating us all fairly.